In this lesson, we'll be learning about class Reptilia, or reptiles. What is a reptile? A reptile is a vertebrate that has dry, scaly skin, lungs, and terrestrial eggs with several protective membranes. Terrestrial means land, so reptiles lay their eggs on land, and they stay on the land as they develop inside of the egg. Reptilian skin is dry and scaly. This helps prevent loss of body water in dry environments, but it must be shed to accommodate growth. So in this picture we see a snake shedding its skin so it is able to grow. All reptiles shed their skin in order to grow larger. Reptiles were the first animal to lay their eggs on dry land. Reptiles became a major group when lakes and swamps dried up about 300 million years ago. The drying period reduced the available habitat for water-dependent amphibians, and so the reptiles were able to make a major advancement, become a larger group, because they were able to succeed on dry land. Now let's talk about the 7 survival characteristics of reptiles. In reptiles, you'll find herbivores, carnivores, and omnivores, so the whole spectrum of feeding. Snakes, however, are exclusive carnivores. They only eat other animals. Reptilian jaws are efficiently designed for applying crushing or gripping force to prey. So reptilian jaws are much, much stronger than those of fish or amphibians. In this picture at the top left, we see a snake eating an egg. Snakes are able to unhinge their jaws, so they are able to eat prey much larger than themselves, or than their head. In the bottom right, we see a crocodile eating a zebra. Crocodiles have massively powerful jaws that are able to snap shut and hold prey for long periods of time, and in order to kill them and make them more vulnerable and easier to kill. For respiration, the lungs of reptiles are spongy, providing lots of surface area for gas exchange. In amphibians, the amphibian lungs were kind of just like a sac or a balloon. There was just one thin membrane that would fill with air and provide the gas exchange. But with reptiles, the lungs are spongy. So it is like a sponge. There's lots of surface area for gas exchange to occur. So it's a much more efficient way to respirate. Some snakes only have one lung. This is because snake bodies are so slender that they don't have room for 2 lungs. So they'll have one lung that actually performs the function of respiration. Some snakes have a vestigial lung, which is a remnant of a lung that doesn't function anymore, but they do have to have lungs to breathe. And then some snakes have a tube that comes out of their mouth for breathing when their mouth is full of food. Snakes will often eat a very large meal, and if they weren't able to breathe, they would die in the middle of eating. But here you'll see circled in red, this is called a glottis. It's a tube that can stick out of the snake's mouth and allow air into the snake's lungs even while it's eating. So snakes are really efficient predators. They have lots of modifications that allow them to eat large meals and be able to breathe while doing so. Now for circulation. Reptiles have a double loop circulatory system just like us. One loop takes deoxygenated blood to the lungs and then sends the oxygenated blood back to the heart. And then the other loop takes that oxygenated blood, sends it to the body, and then brings the deoxygenated blood back to the heart. Reptiles do have a 3-chambered heart, most of them do, but with better separation of blood than amphibians. So if you remember back to amphibian circulation, that ventricle, they have one ventricle, and deoxygenated blood and oxygenated blood would mix. But in reptiles, there is a better separation, and so not much mixing occurs. Crocodiles have a 4-chambered heart. So most reptiles have that 3-chambered heart, but crocodiles and alligators have a 4-chambered heart. So here's a picture of that. You'll see on the left, amphibian heart, and there's that one ventricle where you see purple blood where that deoxygenated blood and the oxygenated blood is mixing. But in the middle you'll see reptiles, and there is a septum that's incomplete, but it really helps separate the blood, and so it's a much more efficient way of getting completely oxygenated blood to the body and getting completely deoxygenated blood to the lungs. And then on the right, for comparison, you'll see mammals and birds. They have 2 ventricles, so they're completely separated. That is an efficient way of getting blood around the body and to the lungs. For excretion, reptiles have kidneys. The kidneys produce urine by filtering the blood of the reptiles, and then solid waste is pushed out through the anus. For response, all reptiles have a nicely developed brain. It's more complex than amphibians. Reptiles have simple ears with external eardrums, so they're able to hear sounds. Many snakes have excellent smell. They have what's called a Jacobson's organ, and it's able to pick up smell with their tongue and then interpret it. And also many snakes have the ability to detect the body heat of their prey. So in this picture we see the Jacobson's organ. In the top you'll see the tongue sticking out of the body, and then on the bottom you'll see that tongue inching up by that Jacobson's organ. It's transferring the molecules it picked up outside and putting it in the Jacobson's organ and smelling that way. In this picture, the red arrows are pointing to heat pits. These are organs that the snakes use in order to detect the infrared body heat of their prey. So they're very efficient predators even in the dark. Now we're going to talk for a second about body temperature control. All reptiles are ectotherms, which another common word for that is cold-blooded. Amphibians and fish are ectotherms as well. This means they rely on their behavior to regulate body temperature. To warm up, they bask in the sun, and to cool down, they go to the shade, go for a swim, or take shelter underground. So they cannot control their own body temperature. We as mammals are endothermic. We'll talk about that when we get to birds, but we control our own body heat. In normal situations, we are 98.7 degrees internally all the time, no matter whether it's hot outside or cold outside. But ectotherms, cold-blooded animals, are the temperature of their surroundings. So if they need to warm up, they need to get somewhere hot, on a hot black stone in the sun to warm up. If they need to cool down, they need to go underground or in the shade somewhere, or in the water where they can cool down and lower their body temperature. What are some advantages of being ectothermic? One is it takes less energy. We use a lot of energy maintaining our body temperature, but having the environment regulate your body temperature, that takes a lot less energy. And so that means ectotherms need to eat a lot less often. Snakes can often eat one big meal and then go months without eating any more food. Same with all reptiles. If they eat one big meal, they can go months without eating again. Some disadvantages of being an ectotherm is you're not ready for instant movement if cool. So if you find a cold snake that's been cold all night long, it's not able to move very quickly because it's cold. And the weather dictates what you can do. If you need to eat but it's a cold day as a reptile, you're kind of out of luck because you can't move because it's cold. Now let's talk about movement. Reptiles have large, strong limbs that allow them to walk. All reptiles have better body support than amphibians and more efficiently designed limbs for travel on land. So reptiles, except for snakes, have very strong limbs that they're able to walk on land. Legs and feet in turtles have turned into flippers. So they have modified legs and feet that are flippers to allow them to swim in the water. Snakes have lost their limbs, but there is evidence that they did once have limbs in their skeletons. Snakes have remnants of a shoulder and a pelvic girdle. And even today, you can see snakes with, they're sometimes called leg buds, but little remnants of legs on their bottom that show that they did once they had an ancestor that had legs. Finally, reproduction. All reptiles reproduce by internal fertilization. This is a requirement for a shelled egg because the sperm must reach the egg before the egg is enclosed in the shell. So all reptiles have a way of getting sperm inside of the female and have internal fertilization. Most reptiles are oviparous, meaning they lay eggs, but some are ovoviviparous or viviparous, particularly snakes. A lot of snakes are ovoviviparous or viviparous. The egg in reptiles is special. It has several protective membranes, and we call this an amniotic egg. Here's a picture of a reptilian amniotic egg. You'll see that it has leathery skin. Reptile eggs aren't hard like bird eggs. They have more of a leathery protective skin on the outside. There's a structure inside of the egg called the allantois. It stores waste produced by the embryo. The amnion, which is what the amniotic name is named for, helps cushion the embryo and protect the embryo as it's growing inside of the egg. The chorion regulates the transport of gases, so it helps let oxygen in and carbon dioxide out. And then finally, the yolk sac is the food supply for the embryo as it develops in the egg. So that is our introduction and the 7 survival characteristics of class Reptilia.